Hey, what's up, Active Church? My name is Joe.
And I'm Shauna.
And we're part of the team here at Active. And we're so stoked that you've jumped on today for Active at Home. We have a great service planned for you.
And if you're new around here, welcome. We're so glad that you joined us. But would you text welcome to the number on the screen, or you can scan the QR code.
I love that we have this QR code. It's also a perfect way for you to get involved here at Active Church. So maybe you've been watching at home for a while, or maybe you're taking a vacation this week and you're like, I need to catch my Active at Home family. Make sure you scan that, get involved. We have life-changing stories happening all the time, and I want you to be a part of it. We're heading into another week of our series, Tell Me Why. And Pastor Casey today is going to be bringing a great word, and I cannot wait to see what he has to share as we talk about communion today. I can't wait. And communion is one of my favorite moments in service every single week.
It is fun. It's a little odd for a new person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's going to be great.
And I think he has a great message, especially if you're brand new to this whole Jesus thing. So make sure you stay tuned. But we have some church news before we dive into our message today. The very first thing is Leadership Summit is next Saturday. This coming Saturday, July 23rd. And I want you there.
We want you there. You don't want to miss it. Incredible guest speakers. We'll have some breakouts. It's going to be great.
Yeah, some of the workshop speakers we have are going to be really talking about how to navigate change, because as leaders, we've all had to walk through change, whether we like to or not. And the demands of leadership are growing, and they're going to keep growing every single year. So shouldn't we be doing it together? And so what we've done is we're going to create a space for you to connect with other leaders, get recharged. We want to love you really well. We're going to be feeding you on that day, which is also really cool.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I love eating. And we got some coffee for you. We got some gifts for you. And we're going to have some great speakers to help you take that next step forward. If you haven't registered yet, you want to tell them how?
You can scan the QR code, or you can click the link.
I love it. It's coming up so quick. Head over to our details section to find out more information about the Leadership Summit. Oh, and did we mention it is absolutely free?
Free.
Free. Because we want to resource you and help you be a better leader in every season. And maybe you're not a follower of Jesus and you're watching, or you know somebody who's not a follower of Jesus today. This is for them, because we just want to help anybody and everybody who is a leader in our community. We also have coming up is our Active Kids Water Day. I can't wait for it.
Water Weekend. We love Water Weekend. July 31st, both services. Bring your kiddos, bathing suit, towel, sunscreen, and our team has got the rest covered.
They go all out, and man, isn't it crazy? And I don't want to bring it down, but July 31st, we're starting to head to the end of summer.
And back to school.
They
need some fun.
They need a lot of fun. So July 31st, our Active Kids team is going to be going all out for your little ones. Bring them on campus, 9 a.m., 10:45. You're invited to join us in our worship service. As always, it's going to be a great time.
No bathing suits.
No bathing suits in our worship service, please. And then one of the final things that we want to let you know about is something that we do weekly here, and that is called Active Recovery. Happens every single Thursday night at 6:30. Maybe you're in a rough season of life. Maybe you're in a season where you need a little bit more support. Maybe you've walked through addiction in the past, or you feel like addiction is beginning to be a part of your story and you don't want that to be true. We want to create a space, and we already have created a space over the past 2 years for a group of people to come, for you to be loved, and for you to find some helpful ways forward. Our Active Recovery group has been a fantastic part of what we do here at Active Church, because we want you to know that you're not alone on your journey of recovery.
Yes, and they meet on campus at 6:30, and there's always childcare provided.
If you want more information, you can email info@activechurches.com, and we'd love to connect you with the right people at the right places, or you can just show up Thursday nights at 6:30. Maybe you know somebody that's part of your life that's looking for something like this. Feel free to share the word. This is open to everybody and anybody, and again, it is absolutely free. Today, as I said, Pastor Casey is going to be sharing a great message as we continue in our series, Tell Me Why. But before Pastor Casey comes and shares a good word, let's worship together, Active. So would you stand to your feet, would you turn up the volume, and let's sing together.
God of your promise, God of the future, you see beginning and end. God of the rescue, God of the breakthrough, how great is your faithfulness. We're not done yet. ever seen, no ears ever heard, no one could ever comprehend. Your word will be enough, your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. God in my seeking, God in my dreaming, you put a song in my soul. God in the working, God I'm believing, you'll do the impossible. You're not done yet. No eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no one could ever comprehend. Your word will be enough, your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. Something right now. You're doing a new thing right now. God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, don't hold back. Yes, you're up to something right now. You're doing a new thing right now. God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, don't hold back. You're moving mountains right now. You're breaking chains right now. Oh, God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, don't hold back. No eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no one could ever comprehend. Your word will be enough, your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet.
On the list of the top 3 to 5 weird Christian traditions, I believe communion belongs on this list. It can be so uncomfortable for some people. I know when I was 16 years old, I had just become a follower of Jesus, and it was so new to me. But before that, when my buddy would just invite me to church, I would come and sit with him. I'd let communion pass. I'd let that moment pass. I'd watch others do it. But when I decided to follow Jesus, I wanted to take it seriously. I wanted to jump right in with both feet. And so I knew that that next Sunday that I was going to be there, I was going to take communion. Now here's the awkward part. I grew up in a church that was small. It had like 20 to 25 people in it. So when you passed on communion, people knew who you were and they knew that you passed on communion. And I had just become a Christian, but I wanted to try this thing. And thinking back on it, it was uncomfortable because the way they had it set up was really weird. They did it very old school style. They had 2 tables in front of the stage, one that had this giant loaf of bread on it, and the other was just a big cup of juice. Now, sharing a cup of juice with 25 people is a little weird, and in hindsight, I'm pretty sure that's how COVID started. But we all lined up to go take the elements. You grab a piece of the bread and you drink of the cup. And as I was getting closer and closer, I started to shake a little bit. I started to have some anxiety about what was going to happen. And I got to the bread and I just stared at it. I just looked at it. And this thought popped in my head, this intrusive thought of, what if I take too much bread? What if I take just a big chunk of bread and then there's not enough people behind me. Because when you're ripping a piece off of bread, you don't know how big that sucker is going to be. It could be small, it could be a little crumb, it could be a giant loaf, you don't know. And so when I grabbed it, I just ripped it as fast as possible, shoved it in my mouth, and moved on to the cup. And then the intrusive thought of the cup came into my head where, is there floaties in this? Did someone backwash in this? For sure it happened, right? But there's people behind me waiting to take communion. And so I had to just take a little drink and go. And I sat down, and it was all such a rushed moment, but it was crazy and uncomfortable for me. But I did it. I felt confident in it. And I don't even remember what I was doing it for. I just remember I had to do this because it was part of being a Christian. And over the years, I've learned the importance of communion and why we take communion. But the truth is, communion in itself can be uncomfortable for some. And for others, it could just be a tradition of routine, going through the motions. And I've been a Christian for 13 years now, and I've been on both ends of that spectrum. I've been in the middle of that spectrum. I know what that feels like. I know what that's like. But when you dive deeper into the story of communion, it has a rich tradition, a beautiful meaning for us as Christians and followers of Jesus. See, before communion, there was this holiday that the Jewish people would celebrate called Passover. And Passover was a huge celebrated dinner that people would have. The Jewish people would get around a dinner, and it was a meal that they shared in a very specific order. And the word that they used was Siddur, which is Hebrew for order. And the key element during this meal was to go through all the stories and the events in the book of Exodus, following God's liberation of the Jewish people from slavery in Egypt. And then recall the plagues and the miracles that took place that led to their freedom. And then they would use symbols and songs to tell this story. And it was a yearly tradition that they all celebrated. And if we fast forward to the time of Jesus walking on earth here, spreading the message of peace and love of God and performing all sorts of miracles everywhere he went. And he was on this road to being the ultimate sacrifice for all humanity. And towards the end of it, he gathers all of his disciples on Passover for a meal that's popularly referred to as the Last Supper. The last time the disciples would break bread together, be all together in the same place. And they sat down and shared this Passover meal. But then Jesus kind of starts the meal off really awkwardly, and he shares some ominous words with the disciples that made them kind of insecure, that made them think about what the fate of Jesus was going to be. And this happens in Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 20. It says, when evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12, referring to Jesus' disciples. And while they were eating, he said, truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me. Ooh, we got a murder mystery dinner going on here. This is crazy, right? The disciples are thinking, who's he talking about? There's 12 of us here. Is it going to be Peter? Is it going to be Judas? Who's it going to be? Who's going to betray Jesus? And they were very sad, actually, because, like I said, these were very ominous words from Jesus. And they began to say to him, one after another, surely you don't mean me, Lord. They're all thinking, I would never do this. Jesus, I washed your feet, bro. We're friends. What are you talking about? I've seen you perform miracles. I got you that bread and that fish for that miracle you did. You remember? That was me, Jesus. And they're all saying, it couldn't be me. But then, in verse 25, Judas, the one who famously betrays Jesus, the one that Jesus knows is going to betray him, and the one that actually already put his plan into motion before the Last Supper, he speaks up. And it's usually the most guilty that speak up like this, right? And he says, the one who would betray him said, surely you don't mean me, Rabbi, referring to Jesus as his teacher. Jesus answered, you have said so. We got a little passive-aggressive motions from Jesus here. He's talking to Judas. Judas speaks up. He knows what Judas is about to do. He knows what he has already done. And he goes, if that's what you say, if that's what you think, Judas. And so they continued talking. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and they had given thanks, and then he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying this, and this is where we get the first picture of communion. Take and eat, this is my body. Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he'd give it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for the many forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Now, this is where it gets strange, because Jesus is saying that this is my body, it will be broken for you. This is my blood, it will be poured out for the forgiveness of many sins, of all the sins of the world. And I'm sure the disciples were looking around, what is he talking about? What does he mean? And then he says something even more ominous, saying, I won't drink this again until I am in heaven, basically. His Father's kingdom, heaven. I don't know if you know this, but you only go to heaven when you die. And so they were all thinking, what's going to happen to Jesus? Is he sick? Why is he going to die? We can't let him die. We can't let this happen. We're his friends. What's going on? And then the weird part of all this, after all this ominous talk from Jesus about his blood being spilled, his body being broken, him going to heaven, they say they went and sung hymns, and then they went out to the Mount Olives. They sung songs after all that, and they just went about their business. And they probably thought Jesus was just having a moment, just being weird, not knowing that he was going to go to the cross and die there. But Jesus, on the day of Passover, creates a new tradition called communion. The bread, a symbol of his body being broken, the wine, a symbol of his blood being spilled on the cross. And the first communion during Passover was a symbolic shift from God, celebrating God saving the Israelites from Egypt, from slavery, to Jesus saving all of humanity from our sin, the slavery of our sin. And not just the people at that time or the people that lived, but people past, present, and future. It was a huge symbolic shift, and that's something that we celebrate today. But that brings us to the question of why we take communion. We know what communion is and what it represents, but why should we take it? Why should we do it? Why do we do it together? Why do we do it each and every Sunday here at Active Church? Why do some churches do it every other week? Or why do some churches do it once a month? Why do we take communion? See, communion isn't a command from Jesus saying, you have to do this in order to get to heaven. There isn't anything special about the elements themselves. They don't do anything to our bodies. And communion doesn't make you a better person or wash away your sin. We take communion to remember Jesus' love for us, the endless grace he has for us, and the hope that there's a better way forward in our life. We see this action after the Last Supper in the journey of Jesus and two of his disciples, Peter and Judas. Two different men that go on two different paths, but they have some roadblocks in the way. See, Judas is a man, he followed Jesus, he loved Jesus, but then ends up choosing to betray Jesus. And he becomes the most famous traitor in the history of traitors and leads to Jesus' imprisonment and death. Knowing what he did and what Judas was going to do to Jesus, Jesus didn't condemn him. Jesus shared a meal with him. Jesus didn't kick him out of being a disciple. Jesus offered grace to Judas still. Because Jesus believed that Judas could change if he chose to. But Judas, he was already on the path. He had his own desires, his own wants that he followed that led to his demise. But Jesus didn't want to give up on Judas because Jesus loved him. And if that's true of Judas, that's true of you and me and the people in our lives. Jesus loves you. And there's nothing that you can do or have done that can remove you from Jesus' grace. He's always going to offer it and extend it. Jesus doesn't believe in just second chances or third chances. He believes in as many chances as you need to get there, to live in Jesus' grace, to say, Jesus' grace is good enough for me. Then we have Peter, one of Jesus' first disciples and Jesus' best friend. He was with Jesus from the beginning of his journey, the 3 years of his ministry that he did. But even Jesus had a conversation with Peter after the Last Supper, saying, look, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, there's no way. I would never do this. But it turns out this confidence that Peter had was unfounded, because as Peter pursued Jesus and finding out where he was going after he was arrested, he was recognized 3 separate times about who he was and who he followed. And he denied Jesus 3 separate times, just like Jesus said he was going to. I can only imagine the shame that Peter felt wanting to hide in a hole or in a cave and just live out the rest of his life alone so he never had to feel that shame again. But he goes back doing what he does. He goes back fishing after Jesus dies. And then the awkward thing happens. Jesus dies and comes back from the dead. He is resurrected. And he meets with the disciples again. And specifically, he meets with Peter. Now, that could be a really awkward conversation. I'm sure Peter was ready to face his shame and the things that he did. And he was probably dreading it and ready to profusely apologize to Jesus. But Jesus wasn't interested in that kind of conversation or a sorry or anything like that. He actually asks Peter, do you love me? He asks him that 3 times. He says, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter replies, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And kind of gets frustrated with Jesus when he asks this 3 separate times, even though he's answered it 2 times before. And knows through the journeys they've been on that, of course I love you, Jesus. Then he says, do what we started. Finish what we started. Leave the shame behind. You don't have to live in that anymore. There's a better way forward, and that's doing what we did before I died. You can continue to do that. He says, feed my sheep. Tell people about God's love. Tell people about the better way forward that you are experiencing now. And that's true of you too. Maybe something in your life is stopping you from living a better life, telling a better story, living that better way forward. But Jesus wants you to drop that. He wants you to let go of that so that you can live the life that he intended, a life full of happiness, hope, and joy, full of life, abundant life, in fact. I've been there. I've been where it's rocky and it's hard to follow Jesus and you feel like you can't stay on the path and there is no better way forward, that you're going to be stuck here forever. But when Jesus comes into our lives, he's able to remove these roadblocks if we allow him, and he gives us that better path forward. And Peter ends up taking that better path. And Jesus, at the end of his journey, he shows us this incredible love through his ultimate sacrifice on the cross. He was put through agony and pain so that we can have access to that endless grace that he extended to Judas and that better way forward that he gave to Peter. But most importantly, he did it for the love that he has for us, the love he has for the people his Father created. See, communion is a reflection of our journey with Jesus. It's a snapshot of our journey that we've had with Jesus to this point. And for some of us, it's been up, it's been down. For many of you, it could be brand new or something you're thinking about starting today. See, I'm a father of 2 kids, a beautiful 8-week-old named Kennedy, and a big personality of a 3-year-old named Sawyer. And I love them both. And one day, Sawyer was doing something that I just wanted a picture of. I wanted to remember it. And after I took that picture, I was thinking, do I ever just go back in my phone, go back in photo albums, just to look at these snapshots and memories of my life, of my family's life? Because we take pictures, but we don't really go back and look and reflect on the memories that we have or that emotion that we felt when we took that picture. Maybe you do it on accident because you ran out of phone or space on your phone because you need some iCloud storage, right? So later that night, after the kids went to bed and me and my wife stayed up, and we just kind of went through our phones showing each other different pictures of our son and our daughter. And our daughter's still new, but we still have so many photos of her already. And each photo brought back an emotion, a memory, a moment of joy, a moment of sadness, a moment of just amazing pride in being parents of these 2 kids. I remember we were laughing at this photo of my son who he was dipping his strawberries in hot sauce and eating it and loving it for some reason, and we thought that was so funny. And we remember crying and tearing up when we saw a picture after his first haircut because he wasn't a baby anymore. He was like a big boy. He was growing up. Time is passing and going by so fast. And then the pride that we feel of just being able to see our newborn baby girl. And all these emotions come up when we look back and we think and we reflect on the things of our lives and we look back at these pictures. And when we take communion, I want us to feel everything we felt when we first decided to follow Jesus, or that feeling you felt when Jesus brought you through a tough time in your life. That's what communion is about. That is why we take communion. And for those that are new to it, I want to encourage you with something. Imagine your life during communion with Jesus at the center of it. What would that look like? What would that take for you to do that? And I understand communion may be new to you, but I want to encourage you to step out of your comfort zone today and think about that. What would a life look like with Jesus at the center of it? What would it take from you to live that sort of life? So communion isn't something we should do routinely and go through the motions. Rather, it's something we should do with our whole heart and our whole mind. Marking a time in our life when we might be busy and things might be overcrowding the calendar. It's a moment where we can stop and pause each week and think about our journey with Jesus. And that's what I would like you to do today. In fact, even if you're watching this at home, you can take communion. Like I said, there's nothing special about the elements itself. What's special is the tradition of going through it, is the routine of it. You could do it with some goldfish and Gatorade if you have it at your house. It doesn't matter. But take some time today. Maybe at family dinner, maybe by yourself, maybe with the person you're watching with now. Take some time today to do communion. Think about your journey with Jesus. Think about what he's brought you through. Think about what it would look like to follow Jesus, to have him in the center of your life. Would you join me in praying right now? Jesus, we thank you for the incredible sacrifice you made for us, God, so that we can have endless grace, God, that we can mess up and not get stuck in it, but also move forward in a better way, in a better future, God, to have that hope that things will get better. And I thank you for the tradition of communion, God, and how for us it can be a moment that can reinvigorate us, that can restore our faith, that can start our faith, God. That could be a moment where we can think about all the things that you brought us through, God. And I pray that you continue to be there for us side by side as we go through rough times, as we're going back and forth on the spectrum of what we believe that day and what we don't, and how we feel and depending on our life circumstances, God. Be that rock in our life. Be that rock in our life that will continue to help us move forward in a better way and move forward in hope and love, God. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Such a great message from Pastor Casey. I love what he had to say about remembering well and really being considerate when I take these elements and even though this is something I do every single week, it doesn't need to be monotonous. It doesn't need to be something I just do. It needs to be something I fully engage with because Jesus is fully engaged with me. So yeah, I love what he shared.
I love about them going back and looking at the pictures and just remembering how fast everything goes, and there's little for just so long and now they're all grown up and big kids.
Yeah, oh man, you're getting emotional thinking about it? Maybe you were changed or inspired by the message in some way. Maybe today you're taking communion for the first time. We want to hear these stories. We want to know what's happening in your life. Always feel free to DM us or message us or email us at info@activechurches.com because we want to hear your better story and how God's writing that in your life. But speaking of better stories, this past week, we had a group of high schoolers go to Christ in Youth Summer Conference at Biola University. And I wish I could tell you every single story that has happened this week. It has been life-changing. It has been groundbreaking for so many students who are making decisions, some of them for the very first time, to follow Jesus. It's an incredible 5-day conference, and our students have come back just so excited for the things that God's doing in their life, for the things that God is gonna do in their life. And some of them are even coming back lighter, believing that God has freed them from the things of their past. And we get to be a part of these stories that God's writing, not just now, but in the future through our youth ministry. And so I want to put a plug in. If you're thinking about serving in youth ministry, it's a perfect way for you to get your feet wet here at Active, to find out more about who we are and really to make an impact on the rest of these kids' lives. It starts now. It can happen now. You can scan the QR code to get involved, or you can check out our website and get involved that way. I love what we're doing here at Active Church, but I want to say I'm really thankful because every student who went to CIY, they were able to go because of your generosity. Anybody who wanted to go was able to go, and it is an expensive camp. But because of your generosity, because of your giving, because of your commitment to tithe weekly, we as a community were able to send every single student. And as the next weeks come, you're gonna be hearing about some of those stories of these students who have made these life-changing decisions to follow Jesus, because I want you to know that we can bridge heaven and earth, that we can be a part of that journey that people are on, of taking that step into that better story. And can you imagine the life change, not just now, but forever, that some of these kids are going to experience because of this week at camp? I love it. And I'm thankful for you, Active, for being generous, for you giving, for you being a part of the story that God is writing here at Active Church.
Yes, I can't wait to hear more of the stories as they come. So there are 2 ways that you can give with us today. You can visit us at activechurches.com and just click the give button, or you can text the amount to the number on the screen.
Active. I'm so excited for what's happening in our community. Reminder, Leadership Summit is this coming Saturday. If you know a leader, if you are a leader, if you're just thinking about leadership or you want to grow in your leadership capacity, be here 8 a.m. Register today. We love you, Active. We'll see you on Saturday.